Well, today, Avatar: The Way of Water, the long-awaited sequel to Avatar, has finally been released, and I've decided to go back and revisit that first film. I would have released this review sooner, but this week I got kind of busy with finals. But now it's all done. I did one semester of college, and this right now is the hardest work that I have to do. So Avatar follows the story of a former Marine, Jake Sully, who is part of a group of people exploring this massive planet, Pandora. Humans are mining Pandora for a precious element, but since the air on the surface is poisonous to humans, one of the only ways to access the ground is through these hybrid bodies named avatars, which are these genetic crossovers between humans and the natives of Pandora, the Na'vi. Being part of the mission, Jake is connected to one of these bodies, where he can now explore the planet. As he begins to form ties with the Na'vi and becomes more like them, he is torn between following his initial orders and defending his new home. This is not my first time watching Avatar. I saw it a few years back when Avengers Endgame came out, when Avengers Endgame almost beat Avatar at the box office for highest grossing film of all time, though I think Avatar cheated by being re-released overseas or whatever happened there. But anyway, it was at that time period that Avatar was being given more attention because of Avengers Endgame, and I decided that I would finally watch it. And though I liked it that first time, I did think it was overrated, and not long after, I saw that the internet was kind of agreeing with me. And this is one of those films that time has not treated too kindly. It's a film that was all the rage when it came out, people calling it a masterpiece, and as time went on, more of the flaws started to show. But since I'm going to watch the new film very shortly, I decided to revisit this film, see if my thoughts have changed. And to a bit of my surprise, I liked it slightly more than I thought I would. Still, I consider Avatar to be an overrated film, but it is still very well made. One thing that time will never take away from Avatar is the visuals. This film is absolutely gorgeous to look at. So I got this Blu-ray right here to watch for this review, and it's the first release of this Blu-ray, which, yes, I know there's another Blu-ray with extended editions, but I just wanted to get it quick. And that thing's from 2010, and the picture holds up flawlessly. Just the opening where it's people floating inside a massive spaceship. Then you get the exterior of that spaceship and just the grandeur of that. And at this point, you're not even on Pandora, and the film looks very expensive. Those of you that have seen Jurassic Park, which I hope a lot of you have, John Hammond would be very pleased with James Cameron because James Cameron spared no expense making Avatar. And when you actually get to Pandora, the visuals get even better. You have these floating mountains in the sky. You have these beautiful waterfalls that aircraft fly next to. You have the different plants and the wildlife. And I just feel that despite the even more advanced CGI that we have today, and whatever Way of Water looks like, which I know for a fact it's going to look incredible, this first Avatar will remain a film that is technically crafted to perfection. And one of the best things that can be done with CGI is that it's so real that you forget that it's there. It just becomes normal. You don't notice it anymore. And there were many points I was watching this film where the world was so realistic and I was so deeply immersed in it. There were a couple of moments where I just stepped aside for a minute and I just realized, wow, this is all from a computer. It's amazing. In this film, you also have these natives of Pandora named the Na'vi, and you see their culture, and This is one of those films that it gives you a different culture to explore. And the film spends so much time on the Na'vi. You get to know about their culture. It feels rich. You get to see how they interact with themselves and other life around them on the planet. And it's all very interesting. And there's some really good motion capture as well on the Na'vi, where these fully rendered CGI people, they can still emote. They can still have emotions, and it's believable. And all that combined with the visuals, it just gives you this world that is the prime definition of escapism. And in some ways, you get really attached to it. When the action takes place, it's epic. Like the rest of the visuals, it still holds up. And usually this is a negative when people mention this, but it made me think of a video game. That being said, I would say one of the best video games you've ever played in your life. And that can be said about pretty much the entire film. That it's this epic journey where everything is grand and delivers an experience like few other. Because Avatar is really more than a film, it is an experience. The cast is pretty good. You have good banter between human characters. It's nice that when you leave the beauty of Pandora and you go to scenes of human characters just interacting with each other, you can still have something to latch on to. If this was a Michael Bay film, the human characters would be the kiss of death. There are so many characters in his films that were just annoying and just had no point in the story. Here, the characters are likable and you enjoy certain scenes where it's just them talking, them joking around with each other, them almost feeling kind of like a family. That being said, the storytelling, it doesn't reach the great heights of the spectacle. A lot of people compare this film to Pocahontas, Dances with Wolves, and the plot does feel like been there, done that. Unfortunately, this workmanlike aspect of the storytelling carries over into the characters, and they're not that interesting either. Main example being our main protagonist, Jake Sully, where when you're introduced to him, you learn about the death of his twin brother, and all the film does with this information is provide the explanation that Jake is taking his brother's place in this mission. The film never allows you to feel Jake's pain, and the plot point contributes nothing to the story later on. You also learn that Jake doesn't have the use of his legs, a plot point that contributes a bit more, as he's promised to get his legs back if he does certain surveillance on this mission. But there's practically nothing to feel about this plot point as well, as it's resolved very quickly once he connects to an avatar and can walk around through this body for the rest of the film. The characterizations are so weak that I could almost convince myself to tell you that this character has no arc. Sure, you can piece one together from lines of dialogue throughout the runtime, but it's just the classic arc of someone learning to fight for someone greater than themselves. I'm not saying that arc is bad. It's been done great before, like with Tony Stark. But with Jake Sully, James Cameron just uses the bare bones minimum of what can be done with that story arc. Adding on to all of this, you have Jake and this Na'vi named Neytiri. They both fall in love, but there's just no chemistry there. And the film wants you to buy into various emotional scenes with them, and unfortunately you just don't. As a result of the storytelling and the characters not being as good as the rest of the film, you can kind of feel that 2.5 hours. And there are certain moments where the pacing kind of dragged. And as for me, during the action at the end, I hit my peak of excitement at a certain point with the action. But then it just kept going. The rest of it, though it looked amazing, it just kind of started to feel like noise after a while. All this because there's this engrossing spectacle, but very little to latch onto beyond it. In the end, I'm interested to see what Way of Water is like. James Cameron has been working on this film more than a decade now, and Nolan took, I believe, 10 years to perfect the script for Inception. Way of Water should be quality work, but I also hope that in that time where he was making this film, James Cameron also kind of reflected on this first film. Because most of all, I want Way of Water to have a justified existence, not just be another visual experience like its predecessor. So far, I've heard really good things, but my fear is that what happened with the first will also happen here. People are blown away by the visual majesty. It becomes all the rage, only for it to be seen years later as overrated. At that point, I would say that James Cameron is, to an extent, wasting his talent. I haven't seen all his films. I have seen Terminator 1 and 2 and Aliens. And James Cameron is a talented filmmaker and storyteller. Avatar is easily his masterpiece on a technical level, but overall, it is my least favorite out of all the films I just mentioned. But James Cameron is great at sequels. T2 Judgment Day, Aliens. I would like Way of Water to be on that level. I would love it to be on that level. But at the moment, I'm just crossing my fingers that he knows what he's doing with his career. For now, I'm going to give Avatar a B+. So this weekend, I'm going to go on a trip, so my Way of Water review will be a bit late. Maybe around this time next week. And also, I'm going to start preparing for my Best of the Year list. I'm very excited for that video. There's been so many good ones this year, even though I haven't reviewed a lot of them. But anyway, as always, guys, have a great day.